Welcome everyone to Nightcap Candid Conversation. You think that I've never done this before. You would think that I've never done this before. Candid Cafe Conversations. Today I have with me one of my very good friends. This is Emma, also known as DreadVoidWitch on the internet. An absolutely delightful gem of a person. There it is.
Good.
Hello, Emma. Welcome to this absolute wonderful show.
I'm so stoked for this. It's gonna be good.
I've known Emma for a very long time. Well, it feels like it's been forever, but I think it's like 3 or 4 years or something like that. I don't know. Time is after a certain point, time doesn't really mean anything.
True.
But we have been playing TTRPGs and then growing as friends for years now. And it's been wonderful to get to know you on like very deep levels. And so I'm very glad that you're here so that everyone else can also know you a little bit better.
That's so nice of you to say.
Yeah, that's kind of a trend on this show is if you come on this show, you are going to get complimented by me. So gotcha. But besides TTRPGs, Emma has other things that she is very knowledgeable and good at, such as spooky stuff. Now you might, if you look behind Emma, there is a giant skull head, and it's very. This right here is a brand, and by a brand I mean it's just how Emma is, which is wonderful and spooky and a powerful femme figure. So we're going to talk about all that today. So the first question I have for you is, what drew you or continues to draw you towards horror, the spooky, the strange, all of that, which is a very big question.
That's a very big question. I think I've always kind of had a fascination with it, which partially I think is due to the fact that my mother is obsessed with science fiction. So I grew up watching science fiction, which can very quickly bleed into horror.
Oh, yeah.
And I always enjoyed Halloween when I was a kid. I loved being able to dress up and be spooky and weird. But I think there was a long period of time where I pretended like I didn't like that stuff because everybody was like, you're kind of weird. And I think that what drew me back to it really was when I was in college and I was taking a class for my senior seminar called the Gothic. And it was where we looked at Gothic literature, but we also would talk about it in a contemporary sense and talked about, horror movies. And so I went back to watch horror movies, and with an older lens, there were so many things that I had missed when I was younger in movies. And I realized that the horror genre and the Gothic genre is the media that truly examines society and humanity. Because it begs the question is who are the actual monsters? What does it mean to be a monster? And what does it mean to be human? And I think that it examines gender roles, and it looks at, feminist horror absolutely looks at gender roles and violence against women and femmes. And I think that it is really important to look at literature and media that examines the values that our society has and questions them, or at least raises them to the point where it's so in your face that you're like, this is actually awful.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you were kind of studying this in college. What did you end up? I remember you saying it, and I can't remember it now. What did you end up studying in school? I know it was something really interesting.
It was English literature was my major, but my minor was ethnic studies.
Okay. Because
I started.
your thesis was on something.
My thesis was on contemporary horror films, and I
Oh,
went
okay.
back to look at it before this because I was like, I wonder if there's like stuff in there, and I would very much rewrite it now,
Oh.
but not in terms of like that I disagree with what I said, but just in terms of like I have even better understandings of things now, and there's so much more that I would unpack.
Oh, okay. Okay. Um on the thread then of things that you know more of now and unpacking things now.
Uh-oh.
Well, no, we had briefly talked about it before we started chatting here, but one of the things that you have said, and if anyone here has seen Emma in a online or public space, Emma's a very strong femme, very secure in her femininity, in her womanhood and power in that, and is a strong voice for women empowerment and femme empowerment. So on that topic, there is a very large, I want to say, like, there's a lot to unpack about women and femme roles in horror, specifically modern horror.
Oh yeah.
Those of you who are watching, you probably are familiar, if you partaken in horror at all, of like the final girl or like the stereotypical virgin in horror genres or like anything like that. So strap in, folks. We're gonna just jump into,
Strap in, strap on. Let's
we're
go.
just gonna go. um so I where to start?
Well, how about we first start by defining Final Girl? Because
There
you
we go.
mentioned Final Girl. So we
Yeah.
can start by defining that. Because I don't know how many people are familiar with it.
Yeah.
So, Final Girl is a concept that in horror movies, there is what is called the final girl, proper noun, capitalized, that is the lone female survivor that typically embodies patriarchal traits within a patriarchal society. She embodies all of the traits of what the patriarchy would like women to be. In other words, she's virginal, she dresses modestly, she doesn't smoke, she doesn't drink, she doesn't have sex, she doesn't date boys, and if she does, she's very conservative in her time with them. And oftentimes, when you really dig into it, oftentimes the weapons that you will see final girls use are also even within the domestic sphere. And I think that Halloween is a great example of that because she uses like knitting needles and hangers,
Mm.
the things that are at our disposal within the domestic sphere, which is where, for a long period of time, the patriarchy, and even still to this day, wants us to be in. Like, that's our domain. Okay. If you want that, great. If you don't want that, it's bad then.
Horror's kind of existed for as long as there has been entertainment. From your perspective, at the very least, where do you see the first like horror, or at least horror in this capacity? Where do you think it started? What do you think it?
So, like, ghost stories and superstitions have existed forever, and folklore and folk tales. And if you get super analytical with it, it would be when the church began to demonize witches and pagans, because that was horror back then. That was horrifying, truly. The first actual piece of media, though, might be The Castle of Otranto, which was the first Gothic novel about this like very rich noble family who, there's this wedding, the woman doesn't want to get married, of course, and then there's this clattering and everybody screams and a giant helmet smashes this guy out of nowhere. They have no idea where it came from, like massive helmet, and he dies. And it's the whole story of people seeing like giant feet or like hands or a sword that is way too big for anybody to be using. And it's about this giant that has lived there forever. And there's a prophecy and all this stuff. And it was also the first piece of media that's considered like found media. Kind of like,
interesting.
Yeah, that was the very first one. It was phrased as like the way that the introduction to it was like, this was found in a rotting castle from the 1400s, like forever ago. These are the accounts that happened here. No, man, he wrote that. That was the author writing it. But that was the first like found media as well.
Uh-huh.
So that I think was, yeah, I think it might be that, which was written. Oh no. Hold on, everybody.
Not in the 14.
That's right. 1764 by Horace
That's
Walpole.
still a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, not around, a little bit before that. I mean, like, Shakespeare introduced some interest, like horror elements of like ghosts and hauntings and demon, like not demons, but like being, haunted by your past mistakes and stuff like that, and even introduced like witches and witchcraft and like Macbeth and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So like I feel like elements of what we now consider as the horror genre have truly, like you said, kind of been around forever, because a lot of it is based on based loosely on people or things or traditions that have kind of been around for forever.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that also it's for some folklore folk tales, ghost stories are like cautionary tales of like, don't go near this area because you won't return. And usually it's like, there's a peat bog over there, you'll probably die. But then you also start getting into more contemporary monsters like zombies, and it comes from Haitian slavery. So I think that so many types of stories that we have that are not written down would absolutely be considered like horror. It's just not recorded or written down. They're oral tales and stories and practices.
Yeah, and they're definitely things that can, especially if they're like oral, even if they're written down, the more you pass it on, the higher chance that there is of it changing or shifting or altering. So like fantastical tales now might have been something very like you were saying, like, the tales of a haunted space of like, terrible things happening. It's probably just like, there was a big ditch there that grew over, and then everybody just kept dying there because they kept falling into a ditch. They didn't get eaten by the land. They literally fell down a hole and died.
They in fact fell.
Yeah.
Alas.
Alas.
Alas. Here we are.
But to bring it kind of together with the things that we already talked about, one of the big things that I think is often portrayed in a negative and often unflattering light is witches and witchcraft.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Emma is a practicing witch. Has been, I believe you said on stream, about 5 years or so ish. So I value her opinion on a lot of these sort of things. But the portrayal of witches and witchcraft and all of that in media, particularly in the horror genre of media, is often not very good. And I think you mentioned briefly why you believe that is, but if you want to dive into more of that, I give you floor to do
Let's
so.
go.
Let's go.
So a long time ago, witches were like midwives and healers. They probably provided counsel. There's a lot of information that we have lost over time, but the church, when they wanted pagans to be absorbed into the church, they began to demonize witches, saying that they worshipped the devil and practiced with the devil and sold their soul to the devil and ate children and did terrible things. And a lot of people died as a result, both men and women, but women were mostly targeted because they were also typically women who did not fit the mold of the puritanical ideal woman, which was you get married, you are property, you have babies, you take care of the home, you make food, and you go to church. And these women had more understandings of illness, how to deliver babies, how to help people in need than the church. And that was probably terrifying for them, that single women knew more than they did. Oh my God. And so that those stories have just carried forward, and we see it even in media today. The number of stories that we see of witches, and so many people are like, oh, this is a great story about witches, and I'm like, it's still male centered. They're still getting their power from men or trying to attract male attention. It is still centered on this male gaze and male narrative and male understanding of what witches do, which is bullshit. Part of that is because of the grip of the patriarchy exists so strongly and is so strong, and puritanical ideals, particularly in Western culture, and Western society. Witches will forever be the hag that we're familiar with, not a wise woman who has an understanding of the earth, has an understanding of the human body, has an understanding of any number of things, because we can't have that now, can we?
To move from specifically like witches and their portrayal in horror to more broadly like the female women portrayal in horror. I think a lot of and I specifically in Western culture, and even more specifically the United States of America, might not see why certain aspects of like, you know, the idea of the final girl or other female presentations in horror are not great. There are, I know you have mentioned, or I've might have seen it with you, I don't know, some horror films that are like exceptionally good or at least decent female empowerment horror films. So I would love to open to you a comparing and a comparing and contrasting between some medium that is not great and then some medium that you would recommend is great.
Okay.
In that light of femininity in horror.
Sure. So oh man, what a large question. So I kind of categorize, like, if we're looking at femmes in horror, there's kind of three different categories. You see the like traditional type of media where you have the male villains and patriarchal and puritanical ideals, and values that must be upheld, otherwise you die. And then you also have the genre of horror where it looks like it is an empowered woman, but it's still within the confines of patriarchal values and ideals. And then you have the very rare, no, this is just straight up good, strong women doing cool things. Which I actually have to rack my brain about right now for those, unfortunately, which is telling. But let's sort of unpack, let's take some OG horror films
Mm-hmm.
If we're looking at, let's say we look at Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Freddy Krueger, who is a male villain who is grotesque and disgusting, and who invades the dreams of individuals so that people are no longer know what's real and what's not. So he completely manipulates their entire reality. And what you see in it is the people that die are always the ones. There's a formula for these old horror films. The people that die are the ones who are having sex, who are smoking, who are drinking, who are dressing provocatively, quote unquote, whatever the hell that means. And then you have your final girl. But some of these villains, while they may not represent patriarchal ideals and values like Freddy Krueger, he doesn't do that. He represents literally, in my mind, he represents the id. If you want to look at like psychologically, he's the id. But the people who survive are the ones who uphold patriarchal and puritanical values and ideals,
Mm-hmm.
which is where the final girl comes from. And then you look at like women on women violence in horror films, which I think having femme villains is awesome. I think it's great because we saw for such a long time, it was just angry men.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that while I don't think it's empowerment, I do think it is at least an interesting dichotomy of female rage and villainy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But let's take a more contemporary. Let's Jennifer's Body. Do you know Jennifer's Body?
I know it by name, but I haven't actually seen it.
So Jennifer's Body is where you have you've got two friends, Jennifer and her best friend Needy, which you know her name is Needy. So we've got that. But there's a queer tension between these two during the whole film. That it starts at the very beginning, they're holding hands, and when they let go of each other's hands at this party, it's because Jennifer is completely entranced by this dude in a band singing on a stage. Okay, well, spoiler alert. This dude turns her into a man-eating demon. So then the entire story is really how Jennifer is eating these boys. But she tends to want to prey on the ones that Needy is close to. And there's one particular scene where Jennifer is killing this one guy, and it's cutting back and forth between Needy having sex with her boyfriend and Jennifer killing this man, but it's cut in such a way that it almost looks like the two women are with each other. And so
Wow.
in other words, by proxy, Jennifer can only be close to Needy by using boys as proxies. So,
Wow.
but it's all based on heteronormative, patriarchal, and puritanical ideals and values because Jennifer is struggling with compet. Needy is the quintessential virginal, wears glasses, has messy hair, very nerdy. And Jennifer is this spicy hot lady. And so you see the violence between them is still based on male ideals and concepts of what women should and should not be. And inevitably, Jennifer dies at the hands of Needy. Yeah. It's a great movie. A lot of people are like, that's so stupid. And I'm like, there's so much to unpack in that movie. There's so much gay stuff to unpack in that movie. Well, and then you have Ginger Snaps, which I would argue is on the cusp because it's still women on women violence, but simultaneously there is a level of sisterhood that is portrayed in that you don't see in other movies. Like you don't see that in The Craft. You don't see that level of sisterhood in The Craft. You don't see that level of sisterhood in Practical Magic because they're still obsessed with men. this is truly just the story of two sisters across time. They will always be sisters in every period of time that they exist in. But it uses lycanthropy as a vehicle to unpack societal expectations of girls and women, and their gender role as soon as they hit puberty. So I guess content warning for talking about menstruation, if we're okay with that. Mm-hmm. So Ginger starts menstruating and immediately is then attacked on the way home by a werewolf and contracts lycanthropy. And then she is filled with this wild sexual appetite. She becomes feral almost, but she also in that same process has agency over herself suddenly. And she begins growing hair all over her body. She's in pain all the time. But then they go to, both when talking to her mom and also to the nurse, all they say is, it comes with the territory. You should expect to feel shitty all the time. Please make sure you wear condoms for the inevitable moment that a man will want to have sex with you. It never talks. It's always within the framework of, oh, you're now a woman and you can have babies. And, now you can start, being with men. It's always within this framework of that's all we're here for. Mm-hmm. And even Ginger tries to ignore it. I think there's one line where she's like, if I, don't let me start hanging around the tampon aisle. So there's this internalized misogyny that we see that she's fighting with while simultaneously suddenly having agency over herself and her body to an extent and her sexual appetite. But eventually she becomes consumed by this and her sister has to kill her. So it's on the cusp of where it's on the cusp in that you have moments where you see an incredibly empowered woman, but similar to Jennifer's body, it's still within these heteronormative, patriarchal and puritanical ideals and values, which is why inevitably they both die. As soon as you have an empowered woman, she dies. Mm-hmm. Isn't that fun?
It's very fun. It's not. It's
not. It's actually terrible.
Well, it's kind of it's like the to slightly sidetrack because it came into my head. It's like the idea of fridging, which if you're not familiar with the idea of fridging anyone, it's the idea that a person can only become stronger, better, motivated, whatever, because of the death of someone who they are close to, usually a woman. And because it is based on, I think it's a comic where a man's wife is like brutally murdered and like stuffed into a refrigerator. And then he goes on because he's motivated by his wife's murder to do X, Y, or Z. You should not have to be motivated by specifically a women or female or femme person dying to become who you're truly meant to be.
Yeah.
No. There's enough tragedy in the world that you don't have to do that.
Immediately no.
Yeah. But that's what kind of came into my mind when you're talking about like the as soon as a femme is powerful, they are no longer allowed to be alive in horror.
Right, which is directly connected to what you're talking about because it's about objectification. Mm-hmm. As soon as a femme is no longer here for the male gaze, male attention, and as soon as she has the agency over herself and her body, she's no longer useful. There's no need for her to be here at all. And that trope of having a wife, a daughter, a girlfriend, a sister die in order for someone to become a whole person is truly the epitome of like, we are only here to serve men. We're only here for that. fuck off. Absolutely not. No. Immediately no.
Consider maybe not.
It's going to be a hard no for me. I'm really tired of that trope of like the hardened man who's lost too much love and now he can never love again. Please give me something more interesting than that. And I would like to stop having all of his relationships die because they die. Stop killing women. Stop it. And queers.
Do you have an example of one that you would consider, if not really women empowerment horror movie, at least something that is close to it?
I have to like think about that, and how unfortunate is that?
I mean, it is, like you said before, it's very telling that like it's not really something. Well, okay, well, I don't know if this will help you think about it or not. But I do want to touch on a horror movie eventually, which is Midsommar, because I had the chance to watch it with you over the summer.
Actually, that's kind of a great example in a lot of
Fantastic,
ways.
because it mashes together a lot of things we talked about: horror, feminine empowerment, in an interesting way, old Norse kind of Scandinavian rituals and magic again in a way. So Midsommar.
Yes. What a good film.
It's a very good film. I've seen it multiple times. Emma, you saw it for the first time when I showed it to you this summer.
Yep. Boy howdy.
If you're unfamiliar with Midsommar, there's probably going to be spoilers. So spoilers for Midsommar. But it is the story of this woman who has exceptional tragedy hit her while she is, I don't know, she's young, like maybe early 20s, mid 20s or something like that. And has a lot of mental and emotional like baggage and trauma that comes from that, and is also in a relationship with an exceptionally terrible, gaslighting, awful individual. She goes on a trip with him and a bunch of his friends to Sweden to be part of this Midsummer Festival. And a lot of shit goes down there. Lots of stuff happens. By the end of it, though, everyone else is dead except for her, which is an interesting take on like the final girl mentality, because she is not the picture perfect like the kind of like final girl that we were talking about, like super like virginal and like perfect, and she is a broken human being.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic and terrible and wonderful film, and I will watch it again very soon because I love it so much.
Yes.
But talk to me about Midsommar and your thoughts on that movie as like a horror with them and all that witchy stuff and all that, everything together.
Everything all together.
Everything all together.
I think that is closer. I did also think of a movie that would be arguably in the horror genre, but considered femme empowerment. It's called Audition. It's Japanese. We can talk about it in a bit.
Ooh, yes.
So Midsommar is, it has that weird dichotomy of like, she finds her power and she finds her family by the end.
Mm-hmm.
And once she realizes that, the absolute joy and solace that you see on her face is amazing. Simultaneously, we all know that she is still held within boundaries of
just different.
They're different boundaries. In some ways, they're still. It's an interesting idea of the way women find empowerment within a still sort of patriarchal structure there,
Mhm.
because they're still used as vessels for reproduction.
Mhm.
Um, but in the process, the men who provide for that reproduction mean nothing.
Mhm.
They are also merely vessels.
Mhm.
So it's that weird dichotomy of like they're birthing things. Well, people, they're not birthing things. I'm sorry. They're birthing people. They're birthing babies. But simultaneously, the men aren't necessarily holding the power because both of them are just being used as vessels for each
Mhm.
other.
Mhm.
And also, uh, it is rare that we see. It's often that we see if there's a male antagonist with the final girl, she does not get the joy of killing him.
Mhm.
She doesn't get the joy of taking back her life from this individual. If there's
Mhm.
a male counterpart who's a gaslighting narcissistic piece of shit, in Midsommar, she had that. She
She
had the
literally
agency.
she
She
literally
chose him.
chooses. Yeah.
She literally chooses his fate, which is beautiful.
Mhm.
What a
Mhm.
wonderful way to end that movie.
Yeah.
Um,
That's one of those movies. It is the only movie where at the end, the first time I saw it by myself, and I like there was so much energy in me. Like I wanted to just stand up and like scream because I like not in a like scared way, but like in a hell yes
yes.
kind of like sort of way. And then I just kind of sat there and thought, but why do hang on.
Wait,
Hang on. Wait.
wait.
There's a lot. I knew in my head everything is telling me this is a horror movie. This is supposed to be scary. And then but by the end I didn't feel there was no fear in it. There was like a little bit of unease, but the unease was like this is stuff that could actually happen. Kind of like unease. Um and people dying in very like none of
Horrifying ways.
I think the thing about Midsommar that to me is this is slightly tangential, but the thing about Midsommar to me that is so well done is all of it is literally explained. None of it is like extremely supernatural or paranormal or any it's not. It's just old and tradition and like
Which is terrifying.
explainable, which I think makes it more human, more relatable, more real, and therefore more terrifying.
Yes. And that right there is why I love horror, because we've grown to associate horror with like the supernatural or being scared or having a moment of fear or being or
Like
jump
jump
scares.
scares, yeah.
And that true horror is an examination of society and who the real monsters are, because in that movie you think that the monster is either some supernatural something or
Or like this group of
arguably
people.
right, or the boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end you're kind of left there like, I actually don't, that cult saved her.
Yeah. 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 Am I the horror? Am I what's wrong?
Am I the drama?
That's what I ended up thinking at the end was like, was I on the wrong side the entire time?
And this is
Was it
why
me?
horror is so good, because it makes you
Yeah.
question things.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the monsters?
Who are the monsters?
Inevitably they're
What's your
humans.
perspective bringing? Yeah, exactly. Is it the viewer? Is the viewer the monster?
Oh god.
That's what I was see, that's what I was thinking when
Yeah,
I was finished with that was like, why wasn't I cheering for her the entire time?
what a great question.
Right? I was like that was part of the thing that like afterwards I don't I like for an hour I was completely useless afterwards cuz I was like I don't know what do I do with myself. um
There's so much to unpack with that one.
It's so, so good. So if you haven't seen it, even with spoilers, it's absolutely worth it. And
Oh
especially if
yeah.
you have an understanding of um like pagan culture and runic meanings and like old Slavic culture and like all of that, it's even better. It's
It's
even
so
better.
very good.
It's very, very good.
It's so very good.
What was the other movie though that you had in mind?
Audition. Okay,
Right.
this is a Japanese horror film. Japanese horror films take it to a next level.
Sure do.
If you think Saw is bad, honey, oh honey, please go watch a Japanese horror film. So Audition, I don't know when it came out, but Audition is one of those horror movies where it's just like two people for the majority of the film. There's a man who is auditioning women to be his subservient wife, and he keeps bringing
Oh,
them in, and they
interesting.
sit down, he interviews them, blah blah blah. Boy, he sure picked the wrong woman to interview, because he goes through a night of absolute horrifying torture, because she's like, you're not gonna do this anymore, you're done, you're done,
You're done.
you're done. um that I think is another one of those things where, who is the villain here?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the woman for torturing this man? Is it the man for trying to find a subservient wife who will be quiet and tend to his needs and never question him and never have her own dreams? Who's to say?
Who's who could say?
I say the guy's the villain, but that's um so that I think is a great example. It's really, it is very gory, very bloody, but the dialogue in it is so good, and it's one of those movies where it's a horrifying thing to watch, and at the same time you're like, yeah, motherfucker, what were you thinking?
Mm-hmm.
What is the other movie? It's with Elliot Page. Hard Candy. Very
Mm-hmm.
similar. Hard Candy from 2005. Um, it is this photographer who likes to take photographs of young women. Yeah. And he claims that it is for modeling, professional modeling purposes. No. Some of these women go missing. And so Elliot Page's character um, toys with him, gets him like drunk, drugs him, he passes out, he wakes up, and the character's like, we're gonna have a chat. Except this chat turns into torture. And eventually he dies in a really horrifying way. It's very good. Oh my gosh, actually, now things are happening in my head. Hold on. Gretel and Hansel came out in 2020. It's partially fantasy, but also horror. Visually stunning, but what's amazing about it is it takes the story of Hansel and Gretel, very traditional, except the witch in this one is more horrifying, if you can believe it. But it inevitably becomes Gretel finding her own power and
Mm,
finding her own journey. And she's terrified to step into it, and she does it anyway. And
mm.
it's amazing. That I would say that one right there. Do we have a witch who's like bad and the typical witch who's eating children? Yes, but but Gretel kills it. Quite literally.
We love it. We love to see it.
Yeah. What's your favorite horror movie and why?
Oh no. So here I come at a disadvantage because I've only started watching horror movies in the last intentionally in the last like year and a half, two
Mm-hmm.
years. Um and so I haven't been able to to watch like the gambit of kinds of horror movies. Midsommar is definitely a top contender for me though. I watched the entire Saw franchise. I enjoy the premise, like the big brain idea of at least the first like 4.
Mhm.
But then it's just kind of like it doesn't really turn into anything. Um I enjoy horror movies that kind of like subvert your expectations. So like what's another one that I saw? I mean, it's the same director, but Hereditary was terrifying and also very good. For similar reasons that Midsommar was very good. Like it had a much heavier paranormal bend to it.
Yep.
But at the same time, it was close enough to reality that it's like truly terrifying, you know?
Yeah.
Especially if you've had, any sort of experiences in the supernatural or paranormal or anything like that. It's not as it's very spooky. It's spooky.
It's spoopy.
It's scary. That one I would quantify as like scary horror, like when people
Mhm.
think of horror. Hereditary is one of those ones that like it has a couple of jump scares. It has like weird body manipulation stuff. It's got, a lot of stuff. It's got gore in it and stuff like that. But both those movies, one directed by the same person, both stupendous, amazing. I'm very excited for anything else that they make. Anything Ari Aster makes, I will watch. And the fact that they made 2 stellar movies within a year of each other, very
Yeah,
good.
it's impressive. And I think they're already working on their next one.
I think so. I think you are correct.
And I think it's gonna be, oh no, that's the other guy. I keep confusing. Um,
M. Night Shyamalan.
nope.
No,
The guy who did The Witch and The Lighthouse.
The Vavitch.
The Witch.
That one's also an interesting. That was an interesting. I need to rewatch that movie. Um, because I'm a big fan of like Old English and using that authentically. So like comparing like The Witch with The Village in like its portrayal of like old time sort of thing. One is exceptionally closer to an authentic thing, and one is
That.
not. The Witch is I want to rewatch The Witch because I remember watching it and thinking it was quite good, or at least an interesting take on like witchcraft and like the demonization of witchcraft. And by the end, like the main protagonist finds it is kind of strange because it is still like implied that she makes a deal with like the devil or like
Yeah, the
a
goat.
male figure goat
Black
figure.
Phillip.
Yeah. For her powers or anything like that, which is it is interesting. But I think it is also she goes into the woods and she finds another coven of witches and
That's right.
is naked in the woods
And they get to fly.
and they get to fly. So like
And she freed herself from the chains of an incredibly oppressive family and society.
yes. So that one's an interesting one. I definitely want to rewatch that one. But I also I want to watch so many horror films. Like Us was also very interesting. You and I got to watch that one. Because that's an exceptional look on black culture specifically, especially like black culture in comparison to white culture in horror. And also I watched a breakdown of that film of like the idea of it being a look on the American dream, how
Yes.
even with like the breakdown between the white person's American dream and a black person's American dream, but also like the difference between like this black family and also these other people, which that has an interesting twist that's very, very cool. Um, these like copies and the the strange skewed view of like
Oh my God.
society, and like it's that one has so many layers that it's so easy to just kind of watch it and be like, oh, this was a cool movie. But then the more you look at it and the more you unpack the different aspects of it, the better and more terrifying it gets.
Yes.
Like even down to the point of the father figure of the main family, like the sweatshirt that he's wearing from the college that he supposedly went to, which is a predominantly like Ivy League black college. It's very interesting. It's all so there's so many
Yes.
details in it that is just
It's so very good.
it's so good. And I can only, specifically with that movie, I can only relate to so much of it because I am not from black. I am not black. I am not from the black culture or anything like that. So I would imagine if you are from that culture, how much more like meaningful certain things would be.
Yes, absolutely.
So good, so good. And the fact that it
I
was it
agree.
was directed and I believe also written by a black person is just
Yeah.
very good. A
Yep.
plus.
Really good. Exceptionally good. Us is it, or not us? Get Out. Same director.
I need to watch
Also,
that one still. Yeah.
everyone needs to watch it. And Robert Eggers is working on his next film, The Northman, or The
What did
Northman.
what did he do?
He did The Lighthouse and The Witch.
I need to see The Lighthouse. I know. We were going to watch it and then we did not.
Oh my gosh, I just rewatched that recently. We gotta watch it.
We gotta watch it. Gotta watch
It's
it.
so fucked up. It's so good. A rewatch was amazing. A rewatch of that, I caught way more. It's psychological horror, which is so very good.
I think that's my favorite overall genre. Is it's not like gory horror. Like Saw was a fun ride, but it was like not scary. It was just kind of meh. Um, and paranormal supernatural horror is scary, but like you get me with psychological horror every single time. Like it's that one that like yes, I'm terrified, but I cannot stop watching kind of sort of
Yeah,
thing.
because our brains are weird.
Our brains are weird. Brains are all sorts of fun and fucky.
They're fun and fucky. A memoir. Actually, you did remind me when you talked about Saw, it also reminded me of another aspect of women in horror films. The moments where sex and violence are split cut very quickly in horror films and in action films, but you will see a moment of sex which cuts to a moment of violence or vice versa, or there's a moment of sex that turns into a moment of violence, happens way more frequently than people want to admit because we're just watching a movie. We're not even considering or unpacking any of this. But the frequency in which it happens is disturbing because the brain chemicals that are released when you see violence and when you see sex are the same. So if you start watching that at a young age, you begin to associate the two together.
And that's not good.
That's bad.
Yeah.
And it also upholds the concept of the objectification of femmes because you start looking also at movie covers and how frequently there's just like body parts of a woman. You don't know her, you don't see her face. It's just her body or her butt. Because that's it. That's all we are, right? And which brings a whole other level of horror to it. But that's the thing about these horror movies that we love so much. They They make it very clear that people who do not subscribe to the puritanical and patriarchal values will die. You will die.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all of them. That's just about all of them. What the hell do we do with that?
I would like to burn it all down. Start over. Gotta start over.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Let's go. Are there movies, either in the horror genre or other, that you would recommend for folks to watch if they want to explore like pointedly the different variants? Is there? All right, let me rephrase that. Are there horror movies that you recommend absolutely everyone who likes horror movies should watch?
Yes. If you like horror, I'm like going through the different genres right now. Of the old slashers, Halloween. That is a foundational horror movie with the quintessential final girl. Watch it. I think you could go even further back. Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward Carrie, which is a nod to Psycho, which a lot of people don't realize. Carrie is absolutely a nod to Psycho, except this time the woman makes it. Scream, because that was the first self-aware, self-referential horror film. It literally unpacks horror films during a horror film. Boy, there's just so many. Us, I actually would throw into that now. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Let the Right One In, which was the original version of Let Me In, which is what we got over here. But Let the Right One In is the original. I think it's Swedish. It's about vampires, but young vampires. It's tragic and beautiful and super gay. Those I think would be some top,
the top contenders.
Primo, super good. Annihilation would be one where it teeter-totters right between horror and sci-fi.
But again, like those two genres,
they're married.
Yeah, I mean, just like you can look at the Aliens franchise, like that's technically sci-fi, but also it's technically horror. It's mostly sci-fi.
Yes,
it's like super tense sci-fi.
Yes, I agree.
But I mean, that's a franchise that a lot of people at least are familiar with. So go check out all those really cool things.
And actually, the new It. They did an amazing job with it. The new It is so good. And also a lot of people are like, but clowns aren't scary. And I'm like, the clown is not the scary thing. The clown represents the loss of innocence and the death of childhood. That's scary. We all have that fear. These are the Neverland kids, and they're sad, but they have no choice.
Yep.
So what do? They take ownership of their childhood.
It's so good. Well, do you have any final thoughts, questions, queries, anything that you want to get down on pen and paper? Or
this was delightful. Thank you so much for this.
You're delightful.
No, you are.
Both. Then.
Do you have any queries? Have you had a bunch of queries?
Oh my goodness, I queried so much. I queried all over this place.
Hey, we're querying everywhere.
But thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful deep dive into feminine empowerment and spooky spookums and all of those delicious, wonderful things all together, all in one place. All of which can be found in you. But also, where can people find you?
You can find me at DreadVoidWitch everywhere on the internet. Yep. That's it, right? I think. I don't know how to do it.
But what do you do? I mean,
Oh,
you're on the internet.
I am on the internet. Yes, that is all I do. No, so you can find me over on Twitch, where I am a variety streamer who plays a variety of different games. Hopefully, by the time this airs, we'll have a better schedule. You can find me on Twitter, where I am usually tweeting things about witchcraft or shit posting or sharing video game stuff. And you can find me on TikTok doing all kinds of ridiculous things. And I'm a teacher by day.
Yay.
So I'm not very good at promoting myself. But if you want to learn more about witches, horror, witchcraft, and spooky things, follow me on Twitter.
Yeah.
And you can absolutely ask any question you want. And if we get really into it, you gotta pay.
There you go. There you go. Fantastic. I love Emma so much. I hope you all also find time and energy to appreciate her as much as I do.
I love you too, Maria.
Oh, thank you. But same. This show will be here again next week. No, I lied. This is the last episode of this season. This is the finale. I just realized. You're the season finale. Congratulations. Season finale Abba time. So I'm glad that we got to end it how we started it, which is a good conversation with very dear friend of mine. So Nightcap will be back next year. I am currently keeping eyes out for potential people to interview. So look forward to it in the new year. Keep an eye out on my socials, my Twitters, the internets that I am everywhere on, for when it's coming up. And oh, wow. It's already here and it's already gone. But friends, until next time, thank you very much for being here and enjoy your nightcap. Have a good night. Goodbye.